pattern making, let me just reiterate some of those things. I made this kind of more complex pattern, and a few of these others I was just kind of like playing with it. And basically, you know, I made some shapes, and then you can take these and you go to Object, Pattern, Make. That brings you into here. You've got a couple of different things that are going on here in your pattern maker, in the pattern options, this menu. So the name, that is going to be the name of the swatch when you're done, okay? There are a couple of different ways to get out of the pattern maker, and some of them will erase everything that you've done and it's like it doesn't exist, and others will save a new version of that swatch that you just made, and others will save over an existing swatch that you've made, and others will commit all of the things that you've done. And so it's important to kind of understand that, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But when you're in here, you're making a swatch, okay? And by swatch, I mean it shows up in your swatch panel over here, right? And so over here in your swatch panel, it kind of shows up there. So you can see some of the different patterns that I've made. Okay, so I've got this, that's this, okay? Then the next thing to understand is this tile tool, the pattern tile tool. What it will do is it will resize this, okay? And this is called a tile, this little blue thing. I'm gonna dim the copies so that you can kind of see what's going on. And the gist of it is that stuff that leaves the right side will show up on the left side. Stuff that leaves the top will show up on the bottom, okay? So if you ever played old 80s video games like Joust or the original Mario Brothers, not Super Mario Brothers, those types of things, or some more modern indie games like Towerfall, you know, some of those types of things. That's kind of the basic ideas. If I took, if I came in here and I made a blue circle, okay? That blue circle, if it leaves the right side, shows up on the left side. If it leaves the bottom, it shows up on the top. If it leaves the left, it shows up on the right. If it leaves the bottom and the left, then it shows up on the top and the right, okay? And that's basically it. If I take it outside of this, it just doesn't repeat because it only repeats what's inside the tile. So it just doesn't exist anymore, okay? And so that's the tile. I can click the tile editor and I can change the size and shape of this, and it will change where it repeats and how it overlaps, okay? If I click size tile to art, then when I move something like this, it moves the tile to expand to include the artwork, okay? Move tile with art is really annoying because I might actually want to like move this all over, and it won't let me because it's moving the tile with art. So most of the time I leave both of these unchecked. Then we get into grid. Now grid here is the basic tile type, and there are a number of other tile types that are basically, you're gonna do something with a rectangle and then you're gonna do something with a hexagon. And so brick by row, if I go like this, it offsets everything. There's a brick offset. Just to explain this, I'm gonna make, let's go size tile to art, and I'm gonna go in here, let's go move tile with art here. Okay, so I've got myself a little brick here. I don't know why let's take these out. I don't know why this is like that. Let's go like that. Okay, so I've got myself a little brick here, and the grid looks like this. Brick by row looks like that. Brick by column looks like that. And so the brick by is just which way you offset it. Are you gonna offset the row, or are you gonna offset the columns? And if you offset the row or the columns, you can do that by one of these fractions. And so I could do that by a quarter, I could do that by a third, I could do it by a half, I could do it by 2/3, right, 3/4. There's all of these different fractions that it will offset. And that can be helpful if you're going for a more randomized situation. But anyway, those are the bricks, okay? Brick by row, brick by column. Then you get into the hex by column, okay? And in this case, I'm gonna resize this here. And let's shrink this guy down. Okay, and what you'll see here is that it's the same thing as before, but now instead of having 4 sides, there's 6 sides. And so if I leave the bottom, I show up at the top. If I leave the top, I show up at the bottom. Those are the same because they're just the same as they were before. But now I have, instead of 1 side over here, I've got 2. And if I leave the upper right, I show up in the lower left. If I leave the lower right, I show up in the upper right. Same over here, okay? And then if I switch this to hex by row, all it does is it gives me 2 on the side and 4 on the top. And so it just rotates your hexagon, okay? Now here's the tricky part. I feel like these are named poorly. Save a copy, done, and cancel are named poorly. Now, if I want to click Save a Copy like this, it'll ask me what I want to save this as, and it will create a new swatch over here. Okay? Now, you think to get out of this so that you can work with this new swatch, you'd click Done, but you should actually click Cancel, because clicking Done will commit this at this point in time. Okay? And so if I make additional changes, whatever, right? It doesn't change this because that's a copy. And so I could save another copy or click Done. But I'm going to click Cancel. And what you'll notice is that as I zoom out here, that I have that, okay? If I want to come in and edit this or whatever else, okay? I can double click on it and it'll take me back into this editor. And if I make changes to anything, like let's say I add a red square here, okay, and I tighten this up a little bit, then if I click Save a Copy, it gives me a new swatch. But if I click Done, it overwrites that existing swatch with the new changes that I've made, which can be helpful because it'll update everything that has that swatch in its fill or stroke with that change. Let me show you what I mean by that. So I'm going to click Done. I'm going to have several of these shapes here like this, okay? And let's just give ourselves some of these different patterns that I've done here. There we go. Okay, so there's some ugly patterns. These two have that pattern inside of it. And so when I double click on this and I make whatever change I'm going to make, let's make that yellow, and I click Done, you'll notice that everything that had that inside of it has been updated with the new thing. If I don't want that, then I can make whatever change I'm going to make and click Save a Copy, okay, name that new copy. I've now got a new copy and I click Cancel. And now they remain the same and I have a new swatch that I can come in and add to things. There are a couple of different ways to get out of the pattern maker that I haven't mentioned that I don't recommend. If you hit Escape, if you double click in a blank area, there's an exit button. Don't use any of those because they just delete everything that you did. I don't know why they exist. It just is like dumb. So that's patterns. Questions on, well, let me show you one more thing. Let me come in here. You also have this overlap. So I'm going to zoom in. And let's just go brick by row. And I'm going to shrink this up like this. And I'm going to take this guy, put him on like that. Okay. So in this case, this rounded rectangle, this circle, is leaving the left side and showing up, but it is showing up underneath this object. And that's where overlap comes in, is you can choose which one is on top, right? This is helpful if you were ever in a situation where you wanted to make, let's make some scales here. So we can kind of go like this. I'm going to take dim off. Okay, and we can come in. And now we've got some scales, right? But you can control whether those scales go up, whether they go down, whether they overlap to the right or overlap to the left. And that's what those buttons do. Dim is just how much do you want the copies to dim. And then this is just how many copies do you want to see. And that's basically it. Okay? So as I'm doing this type of stuff, I've made some changes that I don't want to commit, and so I want to save them as a new one, and then I want to click cancel to get out. And then I can come in and I can apply that to whatever, and I've got this type of thing. Questions on patterns? Most of you are thinking, what does this have to do with the watch? Oftentimes I see that people are trying really hard to do stuff that you could make a pattern or a pattern brush with. So I'm going to show you 2 or 3 other things really fast after this question.
Could you make 2 patterns that kind of match up and then put them together in order to make it?
Yeah.
Instead of I guess would it be easier to make 2 patterns and match them up, or just make one?
It depends on what you're doing. So sometimes, let me show you this. So sometimes you'd get let's use this pattern. I'm going to release my mask. And so I've got this big pattern. I'm going to go like this. But sometimes the pattern kind of bends or warps. And sometimes the edges are like a similar version of that pattern but different. And so I think often making a second pattern that has that alterations is a great idea. Sometimes you can use an envelope. And so it depends on what you're doing, but that often is the right answer. I think on Tuesday I critiqued somebody that had one of those kind of a bunch of balls that are kind of linked in a I don't know what that's called, but the edge is a different pattern than the middle. And that's when I would do that type of thing. Otherwise, if I've got something in the pattern kind of disrupts, you can come in and you can go to envelope distort, envelope options, and you can make sure that you have distort pattern fills checked. And then I can go to envelope distort or object, envelope distort, make with warp or mesh or top object. And now these will each affect the pattern itself. You notice that these are smaller and these are larger. And so you can come in and you can do things with this that will actually alter the pattern, which can often be a great thing to do. And so it kind of just depends on what that is. And when you commit these, you can come in and you can alter them further. Looks like I've got a fill on this pattern that I need to get rid of. And it'll kind of do that. Just to show you what I'm talking about here, I could come in and double click on this to edit this. I'm going to grab this and I'm going to get rid of my fill. And then I'm going to click done, which will update it and get rid of all those white things.
Can you show something that over time?
Yeah. I'm going to double click on this swatch because I want to edit this.
Not that part, how you start warping everything together.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So this can be really helpful. So if I have something like this, I'm just going to have a basic thing. Let's do this with some weight to our stroke. And then I'm going to come over and just for fun, let's go copy, paste in front. Rotate, let's get rid of the fill of all of those. Okay, so we've got this kind of thing, right? I can grab it and I can go to Object, Envelope Distort. Now in Object Envelope Distort, you've got a couple of options. You've got Warp, Mesh, and Top Object, okay? I recommend in general that you just don't use Top Object. Most of the time it looks bad. Sometimes you can luck out, but I think I've got about a 20% success rate with Top Object, and so to me it's not worth it. Envelope Mesh gives you this menu where you can choose how many rows and columns you have to create a mesh. A distortion mesh is a, think of it like you walk into a fun house that's got a bunch of different mirrors at a carnival, and one of them makes you look like you're really tall, one of them makes you look like you're short and fat, one of them makes you look like an hourglass or like you're wavy. You haven't changed. The way that you are being perceived has changed because of the mirror. It's kind of like what an envelope is. It doesn't actually change the paths or anchor points. It changes the way those paths and anchor points are viewed. And you can commit it to an actual change later, but it's a distortion. It's an envelope that wraps around something. Most of you have probably never sent a paper letter, but you'd fold it up, you put it in an envelope, right? And so that's kind of what this is. It's something that is, it's a container that distorts what it looks. And so if I go like this and I go, let's go two rows and 2 columns, or I'll go 2 rows and 3 columns. Okay, and then each one of these, I can use my white arrow tool, move this around. I can use these handlebars to increase or decrease the pressure of things. It becomes a distortion map. And each one has a set of handlebars that go on the XY axis, and I can kind of do that, okay? Then if I want to commit it, I can go to Object, sorry, let me grab the whole thing. I can go to Object Expand, and now they're committed, right? Now those shapes are the way that they looked, whereas before they're not. So right here, if I double click, you'll see that inside of isolation mode, I'm inside of the envelope, and these paths and anchor points are still the way that they are. So I could take this shape and I could add a red stroke or red fill, and that is added and still bent inside. If I want to release this, I simply just go to Object, Envelope, Distort, Release. And then it gives me the weird map that you can delete or discard or whatever. And then you're back to where you started. If I select everything and I go to Object, Envelope, Distort, Make with Warp, this also creates a distortion map. It also creates an envelope. And so the end result can be the same, but it has some presets and these slider controls that you can do on these presets. The horizontal and vertical are always going to be the same. They're going to give you some sort of perspective tilt, as if something is tilting towards you like that. That would be vertical, or towards you, right or left. That would be horizontal. And that's that. I'm going to put those at 0 right now. And then the bend is going to be, in the middle is 0, so in the middle is no bend. You want to go in or out. And so it's a positive or negative of whatever this is. So you can do a flag, you can do an arc, you can do an arch, you can do an arch upper, right? And you can do a bulge, and it'll increase or decrease what's going on. Now for like bulge, you see that the sides are straight and it's bulging at the top and the bottom. I can flip it and I can say do that on the vertical instead of the horizontal. And then when I click OK, what I have now is I have the same thing that I got with Make with Mesh. I now have an envelope distort that I can continue to kind of adjust in here. And so my preference, which is not necessarily the right or wrong way to do it, but my preference is to start with envelope distort, Make with Mesh, and then make whatever alterations I want with my white arrow tool, direct select, or the convert anchor point tool, Shift C. This is very helpful for certain things. So if you go to the playlist and you go to the uncut playlist, I believe. Then there's one of these that does a distortion on the pattern, if I can find it. And you can, I'll just pull this example up so you can kind of see. It's right here. So what you'll see here is that this watch had this kind of grid that was turned, right? These kind of diamonds. And so I took it and I started making my own. And then I did an envelope distort on that so that I could get the outside to kind of get this ripple. and then each one of these would kind of curve around, and then I just added over the top of that, I added shapes that had 0, 100, 0, either all white or all black color stops on a gradient, and then that gave you your highlights and your shadows in that pattern. Okay, that was a lot of talking. Did that help you and you? Other questions on patterns or envelope distort?
Just because I'm gonna have to do it later. I'm doing, when I watch the texture, but it's gonna show different shadows. I know you said you used distort for that band, but how would you recommend for with like lighter surfaces where it's just slightly rounded to show the shadows and highlights?
I mean, I'd have to look at it to see, but most of the time you're just looking at that shape and just bending it. If there's a pattern to it, then you can get that bend with an envelope. If there's not a pattern to it, then I would just get that bend with the edge of the shape. If the texture needs to bend, then you can put an envelope on a texture.
I mean, like in the textures, there's some parts of the texture that have a lot more highlights than others, and other parts have more shadows.
Yeah. So what I would do is, if you've got places where you have a big texture, and you can see that texture show up or hide based on where it is, that's opacity mask. If the texture gets darker or brighter, that shape's on top of your texture and then blended. So you do multiplier overlay for darker colors, you do screen or overlay for lighter colors, and that will brighten or darken the texture. Generally speaking, in textures, one texture usually isn't enough, and you'll usually have a texture that is breaking up your shadows, and then a different texture that is breaking up your highlights, and then sometimes you will have a texture that shows up in the mid-tone value or in the shadows that's not in the transition edges. And we can look at that in a minute. Other questions? Okay. So a couple of other things that I wanted to show you. I've shown some of you guys some of this stuff, but I just wanted to show the rest of you. So there's some new tools that you can do. So let's say that you have something like this. I can come in and I can paint any path, and then I can come in and I can apply a brush that I've created to that path. And this brush will bend and warp around that path. And so I can change this path. I can move it around. I can do different things, right? It's malleable. Sometimes if those corners are a little tight, it kind of folds in on itself or it breaks. It can do some weird and interesting things. But let me show you how to do that really quick. Basically, you're going to go in and you're going to create something. And there's two main things that are helpful if you don't have a tablet. The third one is helpful if you do have a tablet. Tablets give you pressure sensitivity. So the Cintiqs, the Intuos, Surface Pro, anything that's got touch pressure sensitivity on a stylus will give you some of that. So I'm gonna come in here and I'm just gonna do a really simple one. So let's just do a square, and then I'll just copy paste in front, and let's do that, and then copy paste in front again, and we'll go back and do that. Okay, so let's say that for whatever reason this is what we want to repeat. I'm going to take it with my brush panel open. I'll drag it to the brush panel until I get that green circle that says a plus sign. And then you've got these three options: scatter brush, art brush, pattern brush. Scatter brush is very useful with pressure sensitivity. So for most of you, we won't cover it right now. It's not super useful. Art brush is going to take this and it is going to stretch it across. It's going to stretch it across the stroke. And so you can see that the entire length of the stroke is that one thing. If I draw a shorter line, it's shorter. If I bend it, if I come in and draw a very long line, It just stretches it across the stroke, okay? If I do the same thing here, but I choose, that's art brush, but I choose pattern brush, then it's going to repeat, okay? And when I click on this and apply my pattern brush, it repeats it along the path, okay? But it still bends it. So another student and I were looking at this pattern where he had kind of this situation, but you'll notice very carefully that there's some bends in this, right? And if you want it straight, there's a different thing that you can do, okay? And that different thing is, I can come in here like this, and let's highlight this and bring it up. And I'm going to go to Object, Repeat, Radial. And when I do Object, Repeat, Radial, I then have this thing here. And this is a big, let me come down here like this. This is a big thing where I can increase or decrease the circumference of the circle that it is repeating around. And then I can increase or decrease the number of repeats that it has. But what you will notice is that they don't bend. So it's just rotated around this, but they're not bending. You can also Pac-Man it by, having endpoints that, start and stop. And so that's a new one. That's radial. That's new. It's pretty cool, and you can do some interesting things with it. And that would be useful if you don't want the shape to distort, but you want the shape to go in a circle. I think, nope. You can also do, where is that? Object, repeat, release. Object, repeat, grid. Okay, and now you can come in and you can just make a grid of things. This isn't a pattern. This is a grid, and it functions differently than a pattern, though it can get you pattern-like things. So it's different than a pattern. So those are a few other things that you can do with the repeat function. Mirror is just going to flip it, and you can kind of decide where it flips and that type of thing, and you can do it at angles if you want. Okay, so those are some of the things I wanted to show you with that. And then any of those, you can go in and you can distress it, okay? I need to go a little bit faster because I want to get to your questions. But if I had, let's say that I have something like this. Let's continue to use this. So I've got this, but I want to kind of like distress it so that this texture or pattern doesn't show up. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show up, and I'm going to go to Photoshop for a minute. And it's not that Illustrator can't do this step. It's just when Illustrator does this step, every time you touch any of the controls, you're going to get the spinning wheel of death for a few seconds each time, whereas Photoshop is instant. And so instead of having to render things differently and slower, I just do it in Photoshop because it makes it faster. So I'm going to jump over. Now, I recommend that you guys do one of two things. You're either going to purchase or find this type of texture that is given away for free, or you're going to photograph it yourself. For example, I had a student who had one of those watch bands that had like the little pock marks in it. It was a leather watch band, but it was like little divots in it, and she couldn't find anything online that would give her an image that she needed to turn that into a texture. And so she started looking around her apartment for things that had that texture. And it was the same exact texture, though drastically different color, of an orange peel. And so she peeled an orange and she flattened it out, and she took a lamp and she raked the light across that so it cast shadows and caught highlights, and then photographed that, turned that into her texture, and it looked fantastic. So walls and carpets and tree bark and all this stuff, you can take your phone and you can do this, and you can make your own textures, which I always find that to be good. Okay, so what you would do is different than what I'm about to do. what I'm about to do is just grab something randomly off of the internet. What you're going to do is make sure that it's licensed appropriately and stuff like that. But I don't have time to do that right now. So I'm going to bring this over, and I'm going to open up a new document in Photoshop. I'm going to paste this. I've got this now. Okay. So this is my texture. Okay. I can come down here, and down at the bottom in Photoshop, you have this little half circle. That little half circle, these are your adjustment layers and effects, or adjustment layers and a couple other things. The effects are over here. And the one that you want is called threshold. And what threshold does is it gives you a histogram, and everything to one side of this histogram turns into a black pixel, and everything to the other side turns into a white pixel. Okay. Now, I don't really like this, this texture, so I'm going to come back in, and I'm going to see if I can find something else. So here's one. This is Adobe stock, so you guys would license it appropriately and either purchase it or download it based on your licensing agreement. I'm going to paste this in, okay? And you'll see there it is, right? But as soon as I put it under this adjustment layer, it gets that adjustment added to it. This has a mask, and I can double click, and it'll bring this up. And so what I'm looking for is I'm looking for a few scratches in an area. Now what you will find is that the black is going to turn into a vector shape. The white will be ignored. And you need to keep that in mind as you're kind of working on this. Okay, so I'm going to go like this, okay, but then I'm going to add a layer on top. And I'm just going to go to gradient here. And I like classic gradient because I think the normal gradient in Photoshop now that they've got is just terrible. And I want this one in the middle here under basic. And so I'm going to choose that. And that goes from your foreground color to transparent. And I'm going to make my foreground color black. And I'm going to turn my opacity down. And let me show you what I'm doing without this. I'm just going to add little areas of gray, and it just kind of darkens it up a little bit, okay? But what that does here is as I add gray and white, I can kind of control how much or how little areas kind of show up in this texture that I'm doing. And so that's a nice little option, just turning down the opacity of that layer a little bit. Okay, so once you get something you like, you make this shape with your hand and you stab the left side of your keyboard. And that is Command-Option-Shift-E. And Command-Option-Shift-E, it takes everything that is visible and it flattens it into a new layer. And so it's a non-destructive way of doing that. Okay, so this stuff becomes this single layer. I'm going to highlight the stuff that I want here. And I'm going to copy it to my clipboard. Sorry, let me turn this on. And we'll jump over to Illustrator. I'm going to paste this here like this. Okay, let's zoom in on it. And because it is an image, a raster image, your options bar changes. And one of the options that you have is image trace. Again, just to clarify, the only time I find this appropriate is when you're making a texture in this class. Click this button, and you can tell it does a great job. Okay, that was funny because it did a terrible job. This button right here is the image trace panel, and you want to bring up the image trace panel, and you want to click. You want to just kind of pull this open. Okay, this is going to give you advanced. This is going to give you all these options. Okay, and you'll notice that one of these is threshold, and that threshold is what we were doing in Photoshop. But if I do it here, every time I touch it, it kind of hesitates and redoes stuff. It's not going to do anything right now because I gave it a totally black and white image. But every time you touch any of these, it kind of redoes stuff. And if you don't have a super high-powered computer, what I recommend is turn preview off. And then you want all the paths, all the corners, none of the noise, and ignore white. And then you can turn preview back on, and it gives you this texture. We are not done, because then you need to click the expand button, which will turn this from a raster to a vector. And now you can see why I suggest that you don't do this until the end, because now we have a lot of shapes that each have several paths and anchor points, quite a few, okay? This will cause the fan in your computer to just lift your laptop off the table as it tries not to melt. So be really careful with it. But the cool thing about it now, I'm gonna press Command H so that it's still selected, but we can see it, is I can change this to whatever color I want. It's vector now, right? And so I can come in and I can do all kinds of different things with it. If I change it to black and I copy it to my clipboard, or cut it to my clipboard by pressing Command X, okay? Then I can select this guy and I can make mask. And it's like, oh no, it's gone, bring it back. Switch to our mask, paste, and now where I put this vector texture, Command H to hide, it distresses that pattern. So it shows up or hides based on where that's at, okay? And I can also come in this mask and I can say, you know, I want more of this to show up here, but I want it to kind of like be fuzzy. And so I can come in and I can create a circle and I can make that circle white, which will show that. And then I can go in and I can blur that circle so that it has diffused edges. And then wherever I put this circle, you'll notice that it diffuses. If I change that circle to black, it's going to hide, right? And if I change that circle to some sort of medium gray, it hides or shows based on how much gray or how much black or how much white is in there. The more black that's in there, the more transparent it is. The more white that's in there, the more opaque it is. And so that is how, when you look at some of these watches, you can see there are areas where you've definitely got to highlight, areas where you've got a shadow, but there are also areas where the texture just shows up or hides, and it's not a hard line, it's a fade. And so what I recommend is that you come in, like this one would be really interesting, is I've got some that are kind of that darker brown, some that are this kind of like brighter washed out brown, some that are kind of like a medium, and there's different textures on all of those as they kind of transition around, right? And so I could take that and I could come in and I could build up areas where it shows or hides those textures based on an opacity mask on that texture. And then on top of those, I'll layer blending over the top with different objects that have either a Gaussian blurred edge or gradients that have a change in opacity. And then I use multiply, overlay, or screen, and then drop the opacity, and it'll kind of like start to coax color or value changes into that. I've been talking for way too long. Questions? No, old man, my brain is full. Please shut up.
How's your day going?
It's good. I love this stuff. I like it. I do this for a living. This is great. Okay, so those are the things that I wanted to show you with. Those are the things that I wanted to show you with texture and opacity masks and patterns. What else can I help you with? Yeah.
Maybe jumping the gun. What's the next project after the watch project? Like maybe teach us something that will help us prepare for that. I don't know.
You don't want me to do that right now. You just want to finish the watch project, take a long nap, hang out with your significant other, have a good weekend. Go find one. Yeah, go find one.
I'll have so much trauma from this that
Yeah.
I'm just like, you know what?
Just I'm gonna jump immediately into a relationship because of this project. The next project is the gig poster. It's the antithesis of this project. It's instead of being extremely analytical, it's extremely creative. It'll be a lot of fun. Some of you will wish you were still in the watch project, and others of you will just be dancing through the streets. It just depends on whether you're a more analytical or creative person. What can I help you with on your watch? It can be very specific. That's okay.
I want to add like scratches and marks.
Yeah.
Because my watch is very worn out, and I think it kind of adds to the realism.
Yep.
But I'm having trouble making it look like it blends in with everything else. It just looks like I
Mm-hmm.
slapped a shape on there and said, okay.
Yeah. So let me show you. Let me show you what I would do in that situation. So the question is, I want to add scraps and scrapes. Okay. So I'm gonna work with our old friend here. Okay. So I've got this, and let's say that I want to scratch this up a little bit. Okay. I'm gonna paste my scratched up texture here, just so that I have something to work with. But I'm gonna come in and I'm just gonna give myself. We'll just work on this edge right here for a minute. And so what I'm going to do is very simply, I am going to get rid of this fill for now so I can work with this. I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to copy paste in front. Okay. Now this is going to seem like not a big deal. Okay. But what I'm doing is I think I have several things locked. Unlock. Okay, let's go to our layers panel, which I'm sure is super organized. I want this one. Yes, that's the one. What is this? That seems to be nothing. What is this? Okay, so this clip group. I'm going to make a copy of this clip group. Okay, and on this copy, I'm going to change this ellipse. Now, I'm going to start intentionally. Let me name this. Come here. Okay, so I'm going to start intentionally by making this wildly different, and then I'll show you what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to make it blue. Okay, so we've got this. Okay, we're going to come back over here. Okay, I'm gonna select this whole thing, and I'm going to go. Let's grab our texture. I'm going to cut this, Command X, to my mask. Okay, we're going to grab this blue thing again, maybe. That's why I labeled it. Grab that. And then I'm going to come over here like this, and I'm going to go make mask. It goes away, so I'm going to uncheck that, go here, and I'm going to paste this. Okay. Now, I'm going to add, I'm going to say clip, so that where there isn't anything, it doesn't show up. And then I'm going to add white to that. Okay. And if we Command H, what you'll see now is that blue, it kind of shows up, right? Okay, now here's the trick. Okay, the trick is I want to make this blue be very, very close to this color. So I'm going to eyedrop, okay? And that grabs something weird, but I'm going to get close to this. And if I can't get close, I'm going to kind of get over here. That's a little bit better. And then I'm going to drop the opacity, because what you'll find is that those scratches are happening because there's some sort of coating on that metal, and it just sort of scratches or rubs off. But the coating isn't that much different than the metal itself, and so you want to lower the contrast. And so what you're really looking at is this little bits and scratches kind of like that. And if you do that well, where you have one thing and then a copy of that thing where you change just a little bit, it gets a little bit darker, a little bit brighter, whatever, and then you distress that with an opacity mask, it'll start to look scratched. Now, if it's like somebody took like a bar knife and scrapped it across, right? Then you're gonna catch highlights and shadows along those scrapes and edges, and that's a different situation. But if it's just normal wear and tear of occasionally bumping into a door, rubbing against your shirt sleeve or whatever, it's gonna be really minor like that. And that can look really good. I think I have some examples where somebody did that that I may or may not be able to find right off the bat. If you guys see it, point it out to me. I don't think I have it here. I might in the Pinterest, so let's go over here. While I'm looking for this, other questions?
Yeah. Is there a way, so you talked about how the textures and all this stuff make the computer slower. Is there a way to take a complicated object and make it flat, almost like a brand new picture, so it doesn't run as hard?
It's a good question.
So I know just using a different computer is a good idea too, but I was thinking like if it's having a hard time.
Yeah, so the only thing I can think of is not as helpful as that, but it won't need to render stuff that isn't visible. And so if you're not working on part of something and you hide it, that will reduce the render load on your processor.
So just turn off the.
Just turn off visibility on layers that you're not working on, and it'll hide those things. The other thing is, this is a very expensive lab that we would love for you guys to use. So I do recommend that. I mean, yesterday I was in here and we're paying a lab assistant to sit in here. He knows what he's doing. You've met with Aiden a few times, a couple of you guys. And so come in and use the lab. You know, you can open this up, and these computers are 6 months old. They are screaming fast, right? And so if it were me and it's like, oh, the inconvenience of sitting in the lab rather than sitting in my apartment, but sitting in the lab saves me 6 hours because I don't have to wait 10 seconds every time I touch the button, right? I would come into the lab just because it's going to be less frustrating. So have a big party in here if you want. Yeah, so we have these lab computers for exactly that. But hiding something will reduce the render time. Other questions? Shoot, is it this one?
Has anyone in this class done alarm clocks?
Yeah. This is a student example. Most of these newer ones are student examples. When I put this in here, it was a bunch of other stuff, but this is all student stuff. This one, Jacob Kenning. And let's see if his WordPress is still active. Oh, you shut it down. Unfortunately, you can't see it, but he had a lot of distressing going on. If I zoom in, you might be able to see it there. So he had a little bit of distress in there. It was a sad day. I'll have to reach out to Jacob and see if he's still got this somewhere. Yeah, cool. Other things I can help you with. I can just keep showing you a bunch of stuff, or I can directly help you with the project you're working on.
Kind of like with the clock thing that you said, I have a part of my watch that curves down into a square,
Uh-huh.
like where the date of the month is shown,
Oh, okay.
and I'm having a hard time.
Send me your AI file in Slack. What? Oh, do you have? Can you send me the most recent Slack post you did?
I actually changed the watch I was doing.
Okay.
The other one was way too complicated.
If you can find an example of what you're talking about, I can help you. Otherwise, we're just going to be describing visual things audibly, which is less helpful. Okay, other things that I can help you with? Does anybody just want me to work on their watch?
Can you help me work on the shine on my watch?
Sure. Yeah, send me your AI file. Yeah, either you guys are really tired or really on top of it, because I normally have tons of people that are dying for me to do stuff on their watch. Okay, just let me know when that comes through. I'm bummed I can't get to this anymore. I wonder if he's got something on Behance now. By the way, this is a great example. You guys should. I know there's money involved. but you should get your own website that you control, and maybe. Okay, just let me know when the right one comes through. And you should just have stuff up. Yeah, this is him. Okay, so he's on Dribble. He's on Medium. He's on Instagram. Do you have your own website? You do. Can I see anything on it? No. Oh my gosh, that's annoying. Okay. Nothing there. That is a different dude. Is it there? Is the second one sent, Casey? Okay.
But honestly, you can just pull up the other ones I sent you.
Okay. Did I save that one already? Let's see. What is that called? Watch Project Draft. Open recent. This one? That's not it, right? Yours has flowers. It's not that one. Let's go open. Didn't. I worked on it, but did I save it? I don't think I did. Okay. I'll just download it again. Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Or is it this one? And I just, nope, hid the layers. Just named it exactly the same thing. Okay. Downloads. There's that one, but I'm wondering if I saved the other one. Nope. All right. They're trying to get us to do stuff in LinkedIn. I hate LinkedIn, but if I do stuff in LinkedIn, it might get you guys jobs. So I'm willing to do it. So you're just talking about this?
Yeah. You see how like at the top of the watch it has like that premium shine?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I'm trying to match that, but it looks too muddy.
Okay. And are you specifically talking about the case or the band? Okay. Yeah, so yours needs to be richer, meaning saturated and dark. And so I'm going to come in. Is all that locked? There we go. Okay, so as I look at this, I'm going to grab this guy here, and I'm just going to bring this over so that I can kind of see what's going on. And then, okay. Okay, so as I'm looking at this and I'm looking at this, significant differences, right? This is a little bit desaturated, right? Closer to gray and darker. Yours is pretty rich, but brighter. And so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to come in, and it looks like we might be a little bit off on that as well. Let me just grab there we go. See what's going on down here. So that kind of comes down to this weird little shape. I see you're trying to do that. Okay, so let's just kind of adjust some of those things. So I'm going to come in. Let's pull this up. Okay, and then what do we have here? So we've got, is this giving me that? So that's giving me the Gaussian blur. Okay, gotcha. I'm going to, to me that's way too bright. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to overlay. And then I'm going to spread that out a little bit. Okay. So this is fine. I'm going to copy, paste in front. And I'm going to add a bit of a thing. Now there's a hard edge here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this to the top of that. Let me just color this blue so I can see, make sure I'm doing the right thing here. And is that going to, yeah. Okay. So let's go back and I'm gonna get rid of my fill color. So I just have that shape with no fill color. And I'm just gonna use that to put stuff inside of it. So draw inside here. And I'm gonna start with this kind of like hard edge here that is fuzzy on one side, hard on the other side. And so I'm just going to come in just really quick and just, let's go like this. Let's fill that with black. And I'm going to try a radial gradient. If that doesn't work, then I'm going to go to something else. But let's come in here like this. And I'm going to eyedrop in the darkest part of that, which I don't think is dark enough. So I'm going to darken that up. And I'm not seeing a change. There it is. Okay. So I'm going to flip this around. There we go. Okay. And then let's put, I'm just going to make this 0. We'll tighten that up to the edge. And then let's make this go all the way. And this is going to be where I decide if this works or not. If it doesn't work, I'll go to gradient or a Gaussian blur. G for gradient annotator. I'm going to pull that right up to the edge there. Pull this transition over. That's okay. Let's see what's happening with the rest. Then up here it gets bright. So I'm going to deal with that in a minute. Here there's a little shape, and there's a big line. So I'm gonna go still inside of this. I'm gonna grab another circle, but this time I want it to kind of match this edge. So I'm going to put a guide on that edge and on this edge so that I can pretty much get this circle to be right there. And that'll be like that, okay? And on this one, I'm just gonna make it black stroke with no fill. And let's go heavy black line. And then effect blur, Gaussian blur. Tighten that up. Effect document effect raster settings. Let's change these to 300. There we go. Come back to our blur. Yep. Got out of it. What is selected right now? How did I accidentally select that? Give me that. Clip group. And then give me the black line inside of the clip group. Good. Okay. And I can decrease the weight of the stroke. Okay. And then I'm going to multiply or overlay. Overlay gives me more color. Drop my opacity down. And then let's mess with the color a little bit. So HSB, I want a little bit of that, a lot of this. Okay. Okay, so let's give me more of that harder line. Let's see how that looks. A little bit too hard. We'll back that off in a minute. So now I want this outside edge. I'm going to Shift D to go back to draw normal. Command colon. Grab this outer edge, and I'm going to go copy, paste in front. Let's get rid of that. Let's make it green really quick just so I can see where I'm putting it. There we go. Right there is good. So I want it behind the face and on top of everything else. And now I've got something that I can put stuff into. So Command or Shift D twice. So I'm now drawing side. And this area looks a little bit more kind of brownish gold. I've got the too dark here. And so I'm just going to drop in something like this right over the top. I'm going to add a Gaussian blur to that. Maybe more of a Gaussian blur. Click OK. Let's blend this down. Let's try. I think I like overlay for this. And then we'll drop that opacity. Let's change this color. So as I'm looking at this, it's not that saturated, and it's a little bit brighter. That's good there. Okay, now I already have this shape, and so I'm just going to copy paste. I have another one now, and bring this up top here, and let's change our blending mode to one of the ones that makes light things lighter. And then I'm just going to put this kind of at the top, somewhat like that. And I'm trying to match where that is and the angle that it's happening. So something along those lines. It kind of washes out a little bit. So I'm going to saturate just a little bit more, make it brighter. Okay, and then it gets a little bit more here. So I'm just going to take this shape, and I'm going to go Object, Path, Offset Path, and let's go inside, holding down the down key. And then I can make this a lot brighter and a lot more. Okay, and that might be a little bit too much now. And I actually think I want that to bring back a little bit of this yellow. I've lost it now. Now I got to go find it. So let me find that. That's why you label things. Case clip. All right, and inside of this, I want that one high small, and this one high big. Okay, and I'm going to take high small here, and I'm going to yellow it up a little bit. So I want it to be yellow. And then I want it to be brighter and desaturated. There's a touch of that green in there as well. Command H can help me kind of see that type of stuff. So that's getting me kind of closer on colors. What does the left side look like? It looks like I could maybe use this shape over there. Oh, that's why I can't see anything. And so I'm just going to make a copy of this. You guys stop me if I'm doing something you have questions on. It's, goodness gracious. You come with me. And sometimes I just like to just double things up. It just makes them a little bit more of that thing. And then you can kind of change them just a little bit. That washes out too much. That's a little bit better. Okay. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. And then I would just start adding in the other stuff that you're seeing here. And so I've got this shape that's coming up here and kind of rounding off, and we're sort of seeing that. But we have these shapes as well. So I'm going to grab this face, okay, and I'm going to go copy, paste in back, and I'm going to pull this out. And then let's grab that color there. And I can't tell if that's actually showing or not. It is, okay. So I'm gonna make that a little bit darker. Let's see, yep. So let's go darker, more saturated. And this is where Command H can be helpful, because that blue line is really throwing me off and I want to be able to see what's going on here. So that's all right there. I'm seeing that. It's even darker than I'm showing, so darken that up even more. I think it's a little bit bigger than I've got it. This is where you would measure. Okay, so I'm going to come out. Then I'm going to go copy, paste in back, and I'm going to grab this little bit of highlight here. And I'm going to pull that highlight out a little bit more. There we go. Make that brighter than it is. Okay. And then I'm going to grab this guy again, and I'm going to go copy, paste in front, pull this in, Command H so I can see what I'm doing. There we go. And let's get that in there like that. Copy, paste in back. There's a slightly darker version of that right outside of that line. And so let's go and hit this darker one. Darken that up. Okay, so now we're seeing a lot of those. All of this is just, if you zoom in, all of these are just circles, right? There's nothing super crazy going on there. But I'm just starting to stack some of those things. Now, could some of these be fuzzy? Yeah, because this isn't a super hard edge, right? And so I can grab some of these and let's go apply Gaussian blur. We'll come in here. Let's crank it up. That's a little bit too much.
So I had a question with the Gaussian blur.
Yep.
Mine, even if I set it really low, it still looks just like super pixelated. Is it because I'm looking too small, or what's making it look so different?
Yeah, so there's one of two things or both that are happening. So it is a pixel grid that the effects are based off of, and so these Photoshop effects are all based off of a pixel grid. And so one thing that could be happening is if you go to Document Raster Effect Settings, this by default will set to 72. You want it to be 300. That'll give you high definition effects. Usually that gets you what you need right away. The other thing that could be happening is if you pull up your rulers by pressing Command R, and between here and here we've got 100 pixels. And so this is high enough resolution where I can get some depth. But if you're working like your whole watch is 100 pixels, then you might only have 5 pixels or 8 pixels or 10 pixels in the part that you're trying to blur. And so you're starting to like do fractions of a pixel to get anything, and it just breaks it up quite a bit. So it could be that you're not working big enough, or it could be that you're 72 DPI.
That menu where it needs to be 300, where did you find that?
Effect, Document Raster Effect Settings. And that is an important thing to set to 300. The other thing that can help is adding pixels around an object. So if you see that your blurs start to hit an edge, you just add pixels around the object and that blur will go further. Yep. Good. Other questions, other things? Is that helpful, Casey? Okay. Yeah. Excellent. Let's take a look at it. come on over. There we go. Okay, and your question is?
The, like, parts that curve down by the 39, the square.
Oh, okay. Yeah, don't overthink it. That is not as hard as you think. Let me show you. Yeah, probably. So I think I do actually have a video on this. And so you could look for that in the uncut video. But as I'm looking at this, right? One is don't overthink it. The other one is it's probably more complex than most people would think. So at this stage of the watch project, you might be into that enough to where you're seeing like all the stuff. Start really simple and then just keep adding. But there's probably 15 different things going on here, right? And so I'm gonna throw some guides down really quick so I can get a basic idea of what's going on. Thanks. You go back there. You come with me. Okay. And then I'm just gonna work right next to this. So let's go here with this. Okay. And then let's go. So we're like that. And let's make that a gray. And let me get my width correct. Okay. So there's our ratio there. Okay. So I'm gonna get a general thing like that. I'm gonna do white arrow tool, the A, to give myself some rounded corners here. I'm gonna give myself an offset path to get that top. Now this top and just inside on the upper left, those are where the magic is gonna happen, okay? So I'm gonna come in here like this, and I'm gonna go to Object, Path, Offset Path, and I'm gonna go up until I hit that outer edge. Okay, and I'm just gonna make this one just a touch darker. Okay, so now we've got those things there. Okay, and basically I'm just gonna do what I've been doing before. I'm gonna do draw inside. So the surroundings really affect everything, and so I'm gonna start with the outer one, because the inner one will be affected in comparison to the outer one. The outer one is affected in comparison to the surroundings, and I've got the surroundings pretty much nailed down. So I'm gonna come in here like this. I don't need my guides anymore. And so I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna go Shift-D twice, okay? And I'm seeing a little corner indication, and so I'm just gonna start there. I'm just gonna come in a little bit like that. And the rest of this is lighter. And so the easiest way that I see to get this little bit of a fade over here, brighter over here, matching down here, is I'm gonna add a gradient. And that gradient is gonna go from, let's get these colors correct first. So I'm gonna start here. Let's make this linear. Okay, and then I'm gonna make a copy of that one so that we do the same. And then one of these is gonna be 0. And then I can go in and I can draw with my gradient tool, something like that. And that's pretty close. And I'm just gonna decrease the opacity of that a little bit, or increase the opacity of that. I want it to fade in. Okay, so that gives me a basic idea of what's going on there. And then I'm just gonna add just a few little touches here. So I'm just gonna kind of come in with this. I'm guessing green, but I can't quite tell. So if you eyedrop something, I was wrong, it's orange. And you can come in and you can just give it a little bit of color. That'll help it not look fake, because gray isn't real. So I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna do blur. I'm gonna blow this out. And then I'm going to drop this way down. So I'm just doing this for color. So I'm going to go with multiply for this one, and then I'm dropping this way down. Okay. And now to me that looks a little bit too warm. So I'm actually going to cool this off, but desaturate a little bit more. Okay. All right. No, go back here. Okay, so there's that. That shape, I think, needs to be, not that shape, Command 2, this shape. There we go. I'm going to blur that a little bit. Not a lot. I still want the tightness of those corners, but I just don't want a line that is suggesting a cut. Okay, and as I look at that, I'm still seeing maybe a little bit too much, and so I'm just going to drop the opacity just a touch here. Okay, the whole thing seems to still be too dark. I can continue to work with the shapes I've got. I can also just drop something right over the top, and it'll just kind of knock everything back for me as I adjust the, yeah, that's a lot better. Okay. There's a bit of a highlight right here, and I'm just gonna come in, and I'm gonna give myself just a bright white that has a slight Gaussian blur on it. Okay, calling that good. Shift D. Let's come in here, do the same thing. Shift D twice so that we're in drawn side, and I'm gonna come in with a black fill and no stroke. And I'm just going to give myself a little bit of this action. And then let's go Gaussian blur. A little bit more Gaussian blur. Boom, boom, boom. Now to me this is starting to look purple, so I'm going to fix that in a minute. There's quite a bit of spread, but it's contained a little bit, and so I'm looking at how much spread I want, and then I can come in and I can adjust these handlebars. They kind of come off a little bit. Okay, and then let's see if we can multiply or overlay. So multiply, I'm going to drop this down some. Okay, and then I like the tightness of that. But I need it to be darker here and along the top and browner here. And so I'm just gonna take this whole thing, copy, paste in front, and then on my copy, I'm gonna pull this part up a little bit. It curves around. I'm gonna add an anchor point. I'm gonna pull this curve down. Curves around a little bit there. Nice. I'm gonna go one more time. Real tight this time. Let's push in. And I'm gonna go up and over and out and down. This one I'm gonna not put much of a Gaussian blur. A little bit of a Gaussian blur, but I'm gonna have it be pretty tight. And then we'll drop the opacity down on that. That's looking okay. Maybe a little bit higher. Okay. And like I said, a little bit more orange here. So I'm just gonna, let's brown that up. Give me a browner. There we go. Okay, Gaussian blur. And overlay and drop opacity. Stretch this out a little bit. shifty. I think we're starting to get there. That's looking pretty good. That might be a little dark. But then let's see what it looks like with the numbers. And you'll find the right font or whatever. But little trick, black isn't real. So always go just off of black. That looks pretty good. Okay. All right, if you guys need some help, I've got office hours, coreykerr.com/office hours. Have a good weekend. Give yourself plenty of time to turn this in. It'll take a little while to export. Don't try to turn it in at 11 o'clock Saturday night. Try to turn it in on Friday. Something is better than nothing. All right, have a good weekend.